Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're setting sail to the world of rum riches
Mm.
and surprisingly savvy economics, the world of pirates.
We're not just talking about the Hollywood version with parrots and peg legs.
Right.
We're diving deep into the real economic systems that made piracy a thriving business, uncovering the fascinating blend of violence and, believe it or not, entrepreneurship.
Okay, so we're going beyond that simple pirate equals criminal
Yeah,
narrative.
exactly. We're going to see how these disruptive innovators of the high seas built their crews, managed risk, and even influenced global trade in ways that just might surprise you.
I'm intrigued already, but before we get to the plundering, let's start with the basics. How did a pirate crew even come together?
Yeah.
Weren't these guys supposed to be, well, a little rough around the edges?
You'd think so, right? But here's where things get interesting. Pirate ships were surprisingly democratic, especially compared to the rigid top-down structure of, say, the British Navy captains were often elected by their crews, and major decisions like whether to attack a ship or how to divide the loot were put to a vote.
So it wasn't just the captain barking orders. The crew actually had a say.
Absolutely. This system of shared power was a huge draw for skilled sailors. Imagine you're a sailor in the 1700s. You're facing harsh treatment, terrible pay, and zero say in your fate on a merchant vessel. Suddenly, the pirate life, with its promise of riches and a voice in the decision-making, starts looking pretty good.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But how did they actually divvy up the treasure? Was it every pirate for themselves?
Not at all. Pirates had a system of profit sharing that was, by the standards of the time, incredibly fair. A skilled gunner or navigator might earn 1.5 shares of the loot while the captain received two, and even ordinary seamen received a full share, which was far more than they could hope for on a legitimate ship.
So they were incentivized to work together and use their skills.
Precisely. And it went beyond just money. Pirates even offered compensation for injuries sustained in battle. Lose a hand in a fight, you might receive 100 pieces of eight.
Wow, that's like early pirate disability insurance. Brutal, but definitely a sign that they cared about their crew.
Right. It was all about attracting and retaining talent in a high-risk business. These guys understood that a loyal and motivated crew was crucial to their success.
Okay, so we've got our crew assembled. They're motivated and they're ready for action. But you can't just sail around plundering forever, right? They needed places to sell their loot resupply and maybe enjoy some shore leave. Enter the infamous pirate havens.
Ah, yes, those legendary hubs of the pirate economy. Places like Nassau in the Bahamas and Port Royal in Jamaica were bustling centers where pirates could fence stolen goods, repair their ships, and of course indulge in some well-deserved revelry.
I can practically hear the sea shanties and smell the rum.
But remember, these havens weren't just dens of iniquity. They were also vibrant marketplaces operating in a fascinating gray area between legality and outright smuggling.
Wait, so pirates weren't just stealing things, they were involved in legitimate trade too.
In a way, yes, pirates were masters at exploiting the high taxes and trade restrictions imposed by colonial powers. They became incredibly adept smugglers, bringing in goods like tobacco, rum, and sugar and undercutting the official markets.
So they were like the original bootleggers, finding ways to profit from the inefficiencies of the system.
Exactly. And ironically, their smuggling inadvertently contributed to the development of free markets. They were challenging the monopolies held by colonial companies and forcing governments to rethink their trade policies.
That's wild. These seemingly lawless pirates were actually having an impact on the global economy.
They absolutely were. It just goes to show that economic forces often operate in unexpected ways, and that even those operating outside the law can leave their mark on history.
Okay, so we've got our crew, we've got our pirate havens, but let's be real, keeping a pirate ship afloat couldn't have been cheap. What kind of costs were they looking at?
You're absolutely right. Think of it like running a small business, but with more cannons and the constant threat of storms or enemy attacks. We're talking constant upkeep and a whole lot of ingenuity.
Let's start with the essentials. What did they need just to keep their ship seaworthy?
Well, for starters, you need timber for repairs, sailcloth rope, and pitch to waterproof the hull. You need a skilled carpenter who can handle everything from fixing leaks to replacing masts. And then there are the weapons.
Cannons, pistols, swords, the tools of the trade. Those must have been a fortune to maintain.
They were a major expense, for sure. Pirates often relied on capturing enemy ships to replenish their arsenal, much cheaper than buying from legitimate sources, wouldn't you say?
Resourceful and ruthless, classic pirate tactics. But speaking of resources, how did they keep their crews fed on these long voyages? I imagine keeping a bunch of hungry pirates happy was no easy feat.
You're telling me food and water were constant concerns? Pirates used a variety of strategies to keep their bellies full. They hunted fish, raided coastal settlements for livestock and crops, and of course plundered ships for their provisions.
I can only imagine the challenges of storage and spoilage. No refrigerators on the high seas.
Absolutely. Pirates had to be masters of food preservation. They salted meat, dried fish, and used whatever techniques they could to prevent scurvy and keep their crews healthy.
It's incredible how much ingenuity went into simply keeping a pirate ship operational.
It really was a complex and demanding enterprise. And we haven't even touched upon the intricacies of their navigation, their battles with warships, or the delicate diplomacy they sometimes had to engage in.
Well, it seems like we've only just begun to explore the fascinating world of pirate economics. There's so much more to uncover, but for now we need to drop anchor and take a short break. We'll be back soon to continue our deep dive into the surprisingly sophisticated business of piracy. Stay tuned. Welcome back to our deep dive into the economics of piracy.
Glad you're back on board. Last time we talked about the nuts and bolts of pirate operations, from assembling a crew to managing the surprisingly complex economics of just keeping a ship afloat.
Right, and it turns out those pirate havens weren't just for drinking and carousing. They were key to their economic success too.
Absolutely. But let's zoom out a bit and think about how pirates interacted with the larger world. Their impact went far beyond just stealing treasure. In fact, they disrupted trade routes and even challenged the power of empires.
So they weren't just randomly attacking any ship they came across. There was a method to their madness.
Definitely, pirates were incredibly savvy when it came to global trade. They knew the major routes, the valuable cargoes, the schedules. They used this knowledge to target specific ships and locations for maximum profit.
For instance, I've always been fascinated by those legendary Spanish treasure fleets. Weren't they prime targets for pirates?
Oh, absolutely. Those fleets laden with silver and gold from the Americas were the lifeblood of the Spanish Empire. And for pirates operating in the Caribbean, they were a very tempting target.
So attacking these fleets wasn't just about getting rich. It was a way to strike a blow against a powerful empire, too.
Exactly. Piracy was often intertwined with the political and economic rivalries between nations.
Yeah.
By disrupting Spanish trade pirates that could weaken Spain and benefit its rivals like England or the Netherlands.
It's like a high-stakes game of chess played out on the open ocean with pirates as the wild cards.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And pirates weren't just pawns in this game. They were skilled players who understood the rules and could exploit them to their advantage.
Okay, so how did they actually pull it off? How could they intercept these heavily guarded treasure fleets?
Well, for starters, pirates were masters of navigation and seamanship. They knew the prevailing winds, the currents, the best places to lie in wait. They were also experts in hit-and-run tactics.
Right. Their ships were often smaller and faster than those lumbering merchant ships or warships.
Precisely. Speed and surprise were crucial. They could strike quickly, overwhelm their target, and escape before reinforcements arrived. And while they weren't afraid to use force,
Because, pirates.
of course, but violence was always a calculated risk. Pirates preferred to avoid lengthy battles. They wanted to seize their prize quickly and with minimal casualties.
Makes sense. The longer a battle, the greater the risk of their own ship being damaged or sunk.
Exactly. And they knew that a reputation for brutality could also work in their favor. The fearsome image of pirates spread through stories and rumors, often intimidated potential victims into surrendering without a fight.
So their fearsome reputation became a weapon in itself. Talk about early psychological warfare.
Precisely. The legend of the pirate, with its skull and crossbones flag and tales of ruthlessness, became a powerful psychological tool. It instilled fear and sowed chaos, which could be just as effective as cannons and cutlasses.
But pirates weren't just disrupting trade, they were also participating in it in some interesting ways, weren't they?
That's a crucial point. While piracy was undeniably disruptive, it also had some unintended consequences that actually fostered trade.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How did that happen?
Well, as we discussed earlier, pirates often acted as smugglers. They brought in goods that were heavily taxed or banned by colonial powers, creating competition and undermining the monopolies held by those in power.
So in a sense, they were promoting free trade, even if unintentionally.
Exactly. Their activities forced authorities to loosen restrictions and lower tariffs, which ultimately benefited consumers and stimulated economic activity.
It's amazing how these rogue actors actually played a role in shaping the development of modern markets. Who knew pirates were such economic revolutionaries?
It's a fascinating example of how economic forces can have unforeseen consequences. Even those operating outside the law can influence the flow of goods and services sometimes in ways that are beneficial to society as a whole.
Okay, we've talked about their impact on trade and empires, but what about the pirates themselves?
Hmm.
How were they organized? Did they have any kind of structure or hierarchy?
That's where we see some intriguing parallels between pirate crews and modern criminal enterprises. You see, while pirates may have had a reputation for lawlessness, they also understood the importance of organization and structure.
So it wasn't just a chaotic free-for-all on board those ships. There were rules.
Definitely, pirate crews were surprisingly well organized with defined roles and responsibilities. They had a hierarchy, although much more democratic than you'd find on a typical Navy vessel.
So who are the key players in this pirate hierarchy?
Well, at the top, you have the captain. He was the leader and ultimate authority, but even his power was often checked by the crew. Remember, captains were often elected and could be deposed if they lost the confidence of their crew.
So it's kind of like a CEO who has to answer to a board of directors, except in this case, the board could mutiny if they weren't happy.
That's a great way to put it. Then you had other important figures like the quartermaster, who managed the ship's finances and provisions, and the bosun, responsible for discipline and maintaining order.
And let's not forget the surgeon. Imagine he was a very busy man on a pirate ship.
Absolutely vital. The surgeon patched up wounds, treated illnesses, and basically kept the crew alive and fighting fit.
It sounds like those pirate crews were like miniature floating societies with their own laws, customs, and even systems of justice.
Precisely. And while their methods could be brutal, they had a code of conduct that ensured a degree of order and fairness. They had to if they wanted to function effectively.
It's amazing how they created such a complex and functional system in such a high-risk, high-reward environment.
It speaks volumes about their adaptability and ingenuity. Remember, these were people who created a system that worked for them, even though it existed outside the bounds of conventional society.
Right. It really highlights how humans can be incredibly innovative and create order even in the most chaotic circumstances. So we've covered their organization, but I'm curious about their operations. How did they plan and execute their raids? Did they just sail around hoping to stumble upon a treasure ship?
Not at all. Pirate raids were often carefully planned operations involving reconnaissance strategy and a deep understanding of their target's weaknesses.
So they were more like military strategists than just a bunch of opportunistic thieves.
In many ways, yes. They had to assess risks, allocate resources, and coordinate their attacks, often with limited information and under intense pressure.
That actually sounds a lot like the challenges faced by modern-day businesses. They have to analyze markets, assess competition, and make strategic decisions to stay ahead.
A very astute observation. Success in piracy, just like in business, depended on innovation, adaptability, and a willingness to take calculated risks.
And sometimes those risks paid off handsomely. A successful raid could bring in a fortune in gold, silver spices, or other valuable commodities.
Absolutely. But it was always a gamble. Failure could mean capture, imprisonment, or even death. These were people living on the edge, constantly pushing the boundaries of what was possible.
It makes you wonder what drove them. Was it just greed, or was there something more to it?
That's a fascinating question, and one we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive. But for now, we need to furl our sails and take a short break. We'll be back soon to uncover more secrets of the pirate economy and the motivations behind these fascinating figures. Stay tuned.
Ahoy again, mateys! We're back for the final leg of our deep dive into the economics of pirates.
It's been quite a voyage. From assembling a crew to navigating the high seas of global trade, we've uncovered a treasure trove of insights into the world of pirate economics.
You know, it's funny, I started this deep dive thinking of pirates as these romanticized figures of legend, but now I see them in a whole new light.
It's remarkable how much complexity and ingenuity thrived within this seemingly chaotic world.
Right, they were resourceful, adaptable, and driven, qualities they needed to survive in such a harsh and unpredictable environment.
And as we've discovered, their legacy goes far beyond buried treasure and swashbuckling tales. They left their mark on global trade, challenged empires, and even, unintentionally, nudged the world towards freer markets.
So, as we wrap up our exploration, what are some of the key takeaways we can glean from these pirates of the past? What lessons can they offer us today?
Perhaps the most enduring lesson is the power of innovation. Pirates were masters of adaptation. They were constantly evolving their tactics, whether it was finding new ways to plunder ships, outmaneuvering powerful navies, or creating their own unique economic systems.
They were the ultimate disruptors, weren't they? Finding opportunities where others saw only obstacles.
Precisely. And that's a valuable lesson for anyone, whether you're an entrepreneur, a business leader, or simply navigating the complexities of modern life. Being able to adapt and innovate is crucial for success.
Another key takeaway is the importance of collaboration. Pirates understood that they couldn't achieve their goals alone. They needed a skilled and motivated crew, and they had to work together to succeed.
The democratic nature of their ships, with decisions often made by vote, is a testament to that collaborative spirit.
It reminds us that even in seemingly individualistic pursuits, like their world of plunder and high-stakes adventure, teamwork and cooperation are essential for achieving great things.
And let's not forget the importance of branding. Pirates were masters of cultivating a fearsome image. The Jolly Roger flag, the tales of their ruthlessness, the larger-than-life persona of figures like Blackbeard. It was all carefully crafted to instill fear and give them a psychological edge.
A brilliant early form of psychological warfare, you could say.
Exactly, and it's a lesson that still resonates today. In our world of crowded marketplaces, whether you're selling products or ideas, having a strong and memorable brand can set you apart.
So as we prepare to weigh anchor, what's the final treasure you'd like our listeners to take away from this deep dive?
I think it's this. Pirates, for all their flaws, were ultimately survivors. They thrived in a world of constant danger and uncertainty by being resourceful, adaptable, and always pushing the boundaries of what was possible. They embody the human spirit's ability to overcome adversity and forge something new, even in the most unlikely of circumstances.
And maybe, just maybe, there's a bit of the pirate in all of us, that spark of adventure, that willingness to take risks, that desire to chart our own course. These are the very things that drive innovation, creativity, and ultimately, progress.
So the next time you encounter a pirate in a book, a movie, or even your own imagination, remember the complex economic forces that shaped their world. Who knows? They might even inspire you to approach your own challenges and opportunities with a bit more daring and ingenuity.
And that's a wrap on our deep dive into the economics of pirates. We hope you enjoyed this journey through history and unearthed some unexpected treasures along the way. Until next time, may your own adventures be filled with riches, both literal and metaphorical.